Hey everyone, welcome to PowerCore Productions, and with this video, we're going to be debuting a new series that I would like to bring to the channel. I call it PowerCore Essays. Now, with this series, I'm going to be taking a little bit of a different approach to the normal videos that you see on this channel. And depending on how it goes, maybe we can have even more dialogue and discussion in the future. But based on the title of today's video, I want to discuss a polarizing debate, or rather a polarizing topic, if you will, in the anime manga community. Now, it goes without saying that the story of Naruto and the story of Bleach are two of the big three in terms of the iconic stories that we have gotten in the manga and anime world since the late and early 2000s. Starting off as a part of a trio, if you will, the big three of Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece, following their predecessor in Dragon Ball. They took the world by storm in the late 99, early 2000 era as being three of the biggest mangas and animes of their respective time. And since then, their impact has been felt over the last 25 years, with many other series and titles being credited as having their foot into the world of anime and manga simply because of the influence that the big three had. However, all stories eventually come to an end, and for Naruto and Bleach, this was no exception. The first being in November 24th, 2014, when the final volume for Naruto, volume number 72, would be released. And 4 years later, in October 2nd of 2018, the final volume, volume number 74 of Bleach, would also have its conclusion as well. But since then, what exactly has happened with these two titled series? Well, both have taken a turn into the next generation. However, while one has had a more infamous reputation, the other one seems to be relatively fine and mostly accepted by general audiences. But why exactly is that? Between these two characters of the next generation, you know them as Boruto Uzumaki and Kazui Kurosaki. Why is one overly accepted over the other? Is it really just a case of one having better writing? Or is it much deeper? And is the acceptance of one and the rejection of the other not so much on the fault of the character, but perhaps the fault of an entire generation? That's what I'm hoping to discuss with this video today. As always, if you enjoy today's deep dive and you want to see more like it in the future, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that's to come out now and in the future. And without further ado, let's get into today's deep dive. So, first, let's begin with Boruto. As a series, Boruto follows in the second generation of the Naruto franchise. When it originally debuted, it was met with mixed reaction, to say the least. There were many who felt like the story of Naruto had concluded, and thus there was no need for a next era. There were some that felt like if a new era was going to be interjected, that perhaps it should come after the last generation had died off, to wipe the slate clean. There were some who were curious to see what the next generation could be like. And the story of Boruto begins with a flash-forward sequence, years into the future. In the ruins of a destroyed Konoha, we see two young warriors standing on the destroyed stone face of the 7th Hokage. This, of course, being Boruto Uzumaki and Kawaki. As we now know, in the year of 2025, having assumed the title of firstborn son of Naruto after omnipotence was casted, causing the lives of the two young children to be switched, with the world now viewing the real son of Naruto as a criminal, and the other, the one who is trying to kill him, as his true heir. With the infamous lines of "I will send you where I sent the seventh," the story of Boruto entered into a whirlwind as we journeyed back years into the past, dissecting the life of Boruto Uzumaki and his growth as a shinobi. We see the trials and tribulations that the young ninja experiences in a new world, but a world that we're quite familiar with. A world that's now been given something they never thought they could have, a world of peace. But peaceful times don't last forever. And as we soon come to see in Boruto, new foes begin to arise, some who have spent years hiding in the shadows, and others who are just approaching the world that our heroes live in. But this concept goes much deeper than that, and all the same, a concept that many in the community have come to despise. Of course, even in the story of Naruto, the idea of the Otsutsuki was not something that went overly well with audiences. When it seemed like Madara was in the height of his prime, he was seemingly cut down, betrayed by someone who was considered an afterthought in the entire story. You know that being as Black Zetsu. This was something that, even in the midst of Naruto's run, audiences were not in a high appraisal of, as Madara was seemingly cut short, allowing for another final antagonist to step onto the scene, in the form of Kaguya Otsutsuki. Of course, knowing what we know now in hindsight, many things could have been changed for the final arc of Naruto. For some, they view Kaguya as nothing more but a final plot hole, something that was used just for the sole purpose of leading into the next story of Boruto, even though at the time it was admitted by Masashi Kishimoto, the writer of Naruto, that he simply didn't have a way of beating Madara. As he puts it, Madara had become too strong. He didn't have a way of defeating him, not even with his own two main characters. So it was just easier to wipe the slate clean, to take Madara off the board and to use Kaguya instead. Of course, she only stays for a few chapters. She serves her role as the final antagonist before we get to the finale clash between Sasuke and Naruto. So in the end of the day, it's not like her fight is the final fight in the manga, not at all. We still have to look forward to the fight between Naruto and Sasuke, a fight that even in its anime adaptation has way more added to it than what was even shown in the original manga. But that now leads us in with Boruto, and why it's become so polarizing, for good and for bad. For starters, as many would have heard by now, stop me if you've ever heard this phrase before. Boruto is a brat that doesn't respect his father. This is by far the biggest misconception of the Boruto series, and sadly, it's one that's been stuck with it ever since. No matter what the story tries to do, no matter how the story tries to delve deeper into these relationships, it always comes back to the beginning dichotomy between Naruto and his son. For many, fans who grew up with Naruto, who saw his struggles, his trials, and his tribulations, they simply couldn't accept the idea that someone like Naruto could become, as they quote, a bad father. But is Naruto really a bad father? I would say that from all the evidence that we've been given, no. But he's not a perfect one either. And that's what I think is the nuance that is often lost with a series that follows in a next generation style format. The fact is, no parent is ever perfect, even if they want to be, even if they try to be. The fact is, every parent will fall short in some way, shape, or form. But what about the struggle between Naruto and Boruto? Why is this divide in the community so great? And what exactly sets it apart from Ichigo and his son Kazui? For starters, when we begin our story, we see Boruto around the age of 12 to 13 years old. This Boruto at the time has now become jaded with his father's position in the Hidden Leaf Village, serving as the Hokage, a title given to powerful shinobi throughout its entire history, those who stand head and shoulders above everyone else and lead the nation that is the Hidden Leaf Village. If you're familiar with the story of Naruto, then you are definitely familiar with the story of the boy who wanted to become Hokage, who eventually got the recognition of everyone not only in his village but also in the world, having saved it from multiple threats multiple times over. Naruto has built for himself a legacy, one of which his son stands in the shadow of. But is it more deeper than that? When we look further, we know that in the earlier stages of Boruto's life, Naruto was not serving as Hokage. A bigger misconception in the community is that Naruto has been Hokage since Boruto was born, but that's not true at all, as we would later come to learn that Naruto became Hokage just before Boruto would enter into the academy. We know that around this time, Naruto was serving as a shinobi in Konoha, still under the title of Genin, but he was more special than any Genin that had ever lived in history, as he was seen as a hero of the world and someone being groomed for the position of Hokage. We know that before he accepted the position, Naruto was never missing from his home, a home that had been built on love and trust. But after he became Hokage, that's when things began to change. Naruto's presence in the home became less and less, especially during a time when his children, who were now starting to grow older, beginning to enter into the early stages of their own lives and identities, would have wanted their father's presence the most. Now, many Naruto fans and Naruto speakers will say that Boruto had it easy, that he didn't have any struggles, nothing to worry about, so why is there a reason to complain? But I think that's also a disingenuous take. The bond between a parent and child, it's a special bond, for mothers to their children and for fathers to their children. Children are the legacy of a mother and a father. There are moments, times that you'll only get to experience once. A child's first steps, a child's first words, their first day at school, and so on and so forth. Birthdays, holidays, other milestones. More often than not, we live in a day and age where these things are often taken for granted. There are some homes where one or multiple parents are never present at all, whether it be for good or bad reasons. And for Boruto, going into this stage of his life, a life where his father had always been a constant, now suddenly was no longer there. So, what does this make Boruto? Is he simply a spoiled brat who never cared about his father? That's not true at all. Yes, Boruto would act out, but it was only for the attention of his father. In the end, is there something really wrong with that? To actually want to be in your parents' life in some way, shape, or form. Many people will say that Boruto should have just accepted that the village was more important than him. But how do you tell that to your child? How do you explain to them in a way that the job that you carry requires that you put the needs of thousands of people, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people, above even the needs of those who are closest to you? And yes, the argument is usually made that if Naruto really wanted to, he could just make multiple shadow clones who could go around the village, who could stay in the office, and the real Naruto could be home. But that's always a flawed argument. Whether if some Naruto purists will ever accept this truth or not, the Hokage position is one of the most important positions in the Naruto world. It's not something that can be taken lightly. It's not something that can just be passed off or treated as a second priority. Some people scoff at the idea of the Hokage title being a sacred title. And for the ones that do, the ones that claim to be Naruto fans and yet they make this statement, it shows that they really don't understand the nuanced importance of what the Hokage, of what any Kage is supposed to be. The Hokage is the leader of the nation. The Hokage is the one who stands at the forefront of the nation, the one who directs its military, the one who passes off on law and order. He is the one, or she, are the ones who keep the village in check, who keep everything from falling apart. Yes, do they have assistance? Of course, but the majority of the work will always fall on them. No other Hokage, at least to our knowledge, ever created clones or ever created substitutes to be left to do their work while they went to do something else. We've never had any reports of it, and it's never been shown. Think back to the original Naruto series. Where is the Hokage normally? Always in his office, even if he lives in the office or lives somewhere close by. From Hiruzen to Tsunade to Kakashi to Naruto, they are always in that office. You don't see ninjas going out on missions when they become Kage. That's what the other ninja are for. And the reason why I bring this up, why this whole video even came to be, is because I came across a video. Now, out of respect, I'm not going to dox the video maker because I don't want this to turn into some negative discourse. But I wanted to give an answer to one of his statements for why Kazui was better than Boruto. He pointed out that it was because the story continued to follow Ichigo, with Kazui becoming a side character instead of the main character, stating that the story of Bleach follows the Dragon Ball route, if you will, of having the main character stay the main character and their offspring just serving as side or support characters. Now, this is true in the case of Bleach and Dragon Ball. Ichigo and Goku still serve as the main characters to their story, while their sons have respectively become side characters, with some who become important but can still fall to the backside if need be, arguing that Naruto should have taken a similar approach and that Boruto should not have become the main character. But this is a false dichotomy, primarily because the function that Naruto serves and the function that Ichigo serves are two completely different functions. For research purposes, what Ichigo does as a full-time work as an adult and what Naruto does are two completely different things. Naruto, for all intents and purposes, for my American audience, he pretty much serves as the president of an entire nation, a nation far more militarized than even our own. He does a job that constantly requires his attention, not just in terms of his mental, but also his physical. Unlike in our world, when shit hits the fan, so to speak, the leader of the Hidden Leaf Village is expected and required to act, to be on the front lines, to defend his home, to defend his people. Ichigo, however, is in a much different position. As we learn in many of the SPS and other statements that were given by Tite Kubo, the author of Bleach, Ichigo works as a translator. He translates from English to Japanese. Translators, in our current time, make around 60 to 80,000. So he works a pretty comfortable job, a job that for the most part allows him to work from home, with the occasional trip to an office or a business meeting. What's my point? My point is, Ichigo is never gone from the house for any substantial amount of time. He's never been an absent presence in his son's life like Naruto was. That means that the circumstances of Boruto and Kazui's lives are two completely different things. For one, Kazui never had to worry about his father never being home. That was never an issue. For Boruto, Naruto not being home doesn't just affect him. It also affects Himawari, and it also affects Hinata. Boruto is just the one who voices his frustration at the situation the most. So, what's the purpose of this video? Well, the purpose is that recently, or for a while now, there's been a growing narrative that Kazui is a better Boruto, that Kazui is used in a better way than Boruto was, that Boruto as a character doesn't serve or fit the role of an MC like Kazui. And I'm just going to tell you that quite frankly isn't true. Both Kazui and Boruto are fundamentally different characters who serve and work in different stages of their respective series. First, for those saying that the Naruto story should have continued with Naruto as the main character, that is a very flawed statement. Primarily because Naruto's story is not a story that was built to last past him becoming Hokage, or rather, the moment that Naruto accepted the role of Hokage, the day that Naruto becomes Hokage. To follow along with a certain pro wrestler in the WWE, when Naruto became Hokage, he finished his story. A story that had culminated after many, many years with him finally achieving the title that he always wanted. For Naruto, there's nowhere else that you can go with the character in a main character sense. There are no other valleys for him to cross. At least none that would be of your liking. Naruto was never going to be the focal point of a shonen manga after he becomes Hokage, because the role of the Hokage would never allow him to be. When you look back at the original story of Naruto, once again, take a look at the Hokage that we see, from Hiruzen to Tsunade to Kakashi. When we see Hiruzen in part 1 of Naruto, how many fights does he engage in? 1. The Hokage only engaged in one fight, and that one fight only happened because his village was under attack, and it was his duty to act in response to that attack during the events of Konoha Crush against Orochimaru. For Tsunade, we see her engaged in combat against Orochimaru before she becomes Hokage, but after, she doesn't get into another fight until the events of the Pain arc, multiple chapters and multiple episodes later. And after that, we don't see her engaged in combat again until the events of the Fourth Great Ninja War. So that means, in terms of the Hokage, when we see them serving as active Hokage in the story of Naruto, you can literally count with just one hand the number of times that a Hokage, an active Hokage, engaged in combat. Compare that to everyone else. You see the disparity here. If the story were to follow Naruto as Hokage, for everyone that says that the story of Boruto has become contrived, do you know how more contrived it would have to be if Naruto were still the main character? That would mean that in order for Naruto to even get a lick of action, to do anything worthwhile, you would have to have 1. Multiple enemies attacking the Hidden Leaf Village. You would have to have those enemies be of a certain power class, because more or less, the Jonin or Chunin or even the Genin would intercept this enemy before Naruto can even get there. And then, you would have to have this enemy on a power level strong enough to match against the Hokage. Now, I don't know about you, but which one sounds more contrived? The story of Boruto, or a potential story about Hokage Naruto dealing with a Jubi Madara level threat every single week? Because that's what you'd have to get if you even wanted to have a story of that substance. Some people might say, well, the story of Naruto should have just ended with Naruto. Boruto's nothing but a cash grab. And to that I say, you're not entirely wrong. But I would also say this: all of manga, all of anime, it's a cash grab. Bleach is a cash grab. One Piece is a cash grab. Whether if it's an original story or if it's a sequel, if it's being animated, if it's being written, it is a cash grab. Do you think that Kishimoto just wrote Naruto for the love of the game? I'm pretty sure he enjoyed those nice checks that he continues to receive for his series. Same with Kubo and any other mangaka. You think that it's just for the love of the game. It's not. There's also a financial value. Why do you think that there's always a new Super Saiyan transformation with every new Dragon Ball series that comes out? We just saw it as recently with Dragon Ball Daima. I mean, with all due respect for Akira Toriyama, what was Dragon Ball by that point in time? A story that he wasn't even writing anymore. Similar to Kishimoto with Boruto, he oversaw it, but the writing goes to Toritaru. Just like with Boruto, the writing goes to Ikimoto. It doesn't mean that the original mangaka doesn't have any involvement. It's just that he's not in the day-to-day grind. He oversees some things, he gives his opinions here and there, but that's about it. In the end, Dragon Ball Super, Boruto, any other series you want to name, it's nothing but a cash grab. But at the same time, it doesn't make the story any less impactful. And it doesn't mean that the people won't follow it any more or any less. So, if Goku, the main character of Dragon Ball, can be a part of a cash grab, and in terms of sales, the Dragon Ball Super manga does no different than the sales of Boruto, then how can you praise one but bash the other? And now, let's switch our focus to Kazui, a character who has only been seen for one chapter, and yet seems to get this universal praise. People saying that he has so much depth, that he's so interesting. But I'm going to be quite honest with you. How? Yes, there's a mystery, there's an intrigue, but that's only because the story was left in such a way so that Tite Kubo could continue it if he feels like it. And knocking on wood, because I don't wish this upon anyone, but if something were to happen to Tite Kubo today, tomorrow, next week, next month, and Bleach had to end where it ends, then that's where Kazui's story ends. A story that never started. With all due respect to Kazui, he has done absolutely nothing to warrant any level of praise. At least nothing compared to the likes of Boruto. When we see in the final chapter of Bleach, we see a young Kazui, and many people who are in awe of this young man, I'd like to point something out. When we first see him, we see Orihime peeking into his room. She's checking on him along with Kon, the stuffed bear with the soul candy, to make sure that her son's asleep, to make sure that he's safe. The moment that she leaves the room, Kazui sneaks out of his room, even though Kon is warning him not to, disobeying his parents and sneaking off to engage in activities that obviously his parents don't know about. Now, I don't know about you, but for everyone that's always calling Boruto a spoiled brat, someone who's ungrateful, doesn't do this, doesn't do that, your first introduction to Ichigo's son is breaking the rules of his parents, doing something behind their back without their permission and without their know-how. And not just is he breaking a rule, but he's also doing something that's very dangerous. You know what that is. He opens a portal to hell, and he alludes to the fact that this is something that he's been doing for a while now. Opening portals to hell and sending souls through it. Now, of course, he doesn't know what his actions are doing, and he doesn't know the ramifications of such actions. But as we see in the final chapter of Bleach, the potential dangers of the Hellverse are starting to be shown, as the gateway between worlds is starting to open up. And now that borderline is starting to blur. And potentially, Kazui has played a role in that happening. Not saying that it's entirely his fault, but what I am saying is, what's going to happen should the story continue if Ichigo finds out what his son has been doing? How is Ichigo going to react? How will you react if Kazui doesn't take it the right way? All of a sudden, is Kazui the grateful child who respects his elders? Or is he someone who got in way over his head? See how quickly the narrative can change? How the dynamic can change? So many things can always change, for better and for worse. Everyone praises Kazui and they hate Boruto. But so easily, the dynamic can be flipped. The scene can be rewritten in any way, shape, and form. For many that compare the two boys, they'll often say that Boruto is a Gary Stew, that Boruto doesn't really train for his power, that he didn't work for it, and they praise Kazui for being a prodigy. But we've never seen how Kazui trains. We don't know how far Kazui's come, but he has to be pretty powerful, considering the fact that despite being around 10 or 11 years old, he has a Zanpakuto, he has a transformation. Based on his transformation, his full bringer powers have awakened. He has the ability to open a portal to the gates of hell and can send souls through it. And he has the ability to dissipate the Ryatsu of Yawatch. He's doing all of these crazy things, and we've never seen him train for it. We've never seen him work for it. He's just overly broken and powerful right off the gate, and we accept it. But with Boruto, no matter how hard we see him train, no matter how hard we see him work, he's always labeled as the Gary Stew. Again, the point of this video is not to try to praise one and bash the other. Boruto as a series has its flaws. And, compared to Naruto, I would say that it's still the inferior, but that doesn't make it bad. Simply put, Boruto as a series is one that has been misconstrued over time. It is a series that many people did not give grace that they would give others. For Boruto, he's held up to a false legacy, a legacy that Naruto would never be held to. Or rather, arguments that are made against Boruto, more often than not, are made in bad faith. To take one example, many people complain that the Boruto series disrespects the legacy of Naruto. And some will point out that they ruined the side characters. But let's be honest here. Did Naruto respect its own side characters? Do you remember the last time that Rock Lee had a canon fight? Canon fight. I'm not talking about filler. I'm not talking about anime filler. I'm not talking about movie. Canon. Rock Lee's last canon fight was against a clone of himself that he barely managed to beat. Rock Lee, the character who is often put on a pedestal by the Naruto community, a character who every time he's mentioned in Boruto, people say that Boruto ruined his legacy. No, Boruto did not ruin the legacy of Rock Lee. Boruto did not ruin the legacy of Kiba or Shino or Tenten or any other side character you can think of. Naruto ruined the legacy of its own side characters. Because the truth is, Kishimoto never had anything for them. Yet, so often, more often than not, Boruto has to feel the brunt of not meeting the expectation of the fans of these side characters whose own series could not reach their expectations. The fact is, Naruto had over 700 chapters, I believe. I think 600 to 700. Anyway, it had over hundreds of chapters to do something with these characters, and they never did. But let's take it over with Bleach. If the Bleach story continues, and we see that the side characters haven't gotten any stronger, that these side characters are getting one shot and defeated rather easily, while Kazui and Ichigo and any other new age character that comes along does anything special, does Kazui ruin their legacy? Is it his fault? Because a child, a 10 to 11-year-old child, is already being shown to have the capabilities, the powers, and the skills of a full-grown Shinigami captain. Even though we've never seen his training for it, we've never seen him working for this power, we're just under the impression that he could just do it. And yet it's accepted. It's a level of hypocrisy. A hypocrisy that I feel needs to be called out. Again, I'm not saying that one is more perfect than the other. I'm just stating that if we're going to call out the facts, we should call out the facts. So, what's the purpose of this video? What exactly have I been trying to get across? It's quite simple. Kazui Kurosaki, Boruto Uzumaki. Sons of legendary shonen protagonists, a part of the quintessential big three of the anime and manga community. One is loved, one is vilified. And yet, in my humble opinion, I don't think either one have failed their fathers. For Boruto, for the Boruto that I have seen, for the Boruto that's always been there, he is a character who has made mistakes. A character that, despite his genius, it doesn't get him out of trouble as easily as you might think. He has struggled, he has suffered, but he always shows the resilience to come back, to never give up. Boruto is called a spoiled brat, but never once did he use his title or his position to try to gain favor in the village. Never once did he believe that being the Hokage's son gave him a special privilege to treat others with disrespect or to look down upon others. He has always been someone who looked out for his friends, someone who always cared for the weak or for the innocent, someone who never tolerated unfairness. Did he make a mistake in the Chunin exams? Yes. And was it a failure on his part to try to understand his father more? Absolutely. But Naruto also bears the brunt of that responsibility, because just as Boruto failed to reach him, for a time he failed to reach his son. But after the events of the Momoshiki arc, we see their relationship begin to be reformed. Boruto goes from just bad-mouthing Naruto to praising him, to constantly praising his strength every time anyone speaks about him. He holds his father in the highest regard and loves him. And it's idiotic and moronic when people say that Boruto is an ungrateful brat that doesn't love his family, that doesn't love his father. I've seen people go as far as to say that Hinata and Naruto don't deserve to have Boruto as a son. And that is the dumbest thing I have ever heard. Boruto has gone so far as to go days without sleeping because he feared that Momoshiki would take over his body and that he might hurt his family and friends. Boruto went as far as to sacrifice his life multiple times for the sake of Sasuke, Naruto, Kawaki, and others. Boruto, Despite having his life stolen from him, being branded as a traitor and a criminal, being accused of murdering his own parents, and having the world hunt him and want him dead, he continues to fight on. He continues to show the spirit of a shinobi, a spirit that will never change no matter the era. You can like or hate Boruto. Ultimately, this video, it can't convince you otherwise. And you can like and praise Kazui, no matter what he does. Personally, I am a fan of both characters, and I look forward to seeing where they go in the future. I don't think either son disservices the legacies of their fathers, but I think their fathers' legacies go in different terms. For Ichigo and for Naruto, the way they live and the way they conduct themselves, it has given to the product of two extraordinary sons, who I think will go on to do great things in their respective stories. Yes, the story of Naruto is over, but his spirit lives on in his son. And for Kazui, he joins in the journey of his father, Ichigo Kurosaki. For the two of them, they have great legacies that will shine bright not only now, but in the future. So, all I can do is ask, give them a chance. Look deeper, and maybe you'll find something truly extraordinary. If you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. And stay tuned till next time.